Free audio post-production by alphonic.com.
This is Justin West from Podcast Portugal. Really interested and fascinated with my next guest because we have quite a few similarities with living abroad. I only just recently met Elder or Helder. We have to make sure we pronounce the H or not pronounce the H in Portuguese. He's had an extraordinary life, and I actually met him at the Volcom happening. Volcom is a really cool surf brand. They provided a lot of help for the younger generation of surfers, particularly here in Portugal, that I know about. We'll go through a few of the big names who've been really helped by Volcom. And we just happened to share a beer with my good friend, a mutual friend, Marlon Litka. And we decided, hey, man, you sound like a super interesting person. And I thought, got to get him on the podcast. So Helder, thank you. And a really big welcome.
Hey. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, like we said, I'm super honored and really appreciate the time. And fascinated to hear your childhood in Angola and the impact of war and moving to Portugal as a refugee. So that would be a fascinating starting point.
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, it's always it's not easy to be in that situation as you might imagine, but it happened to us back in 1975, after the revolution in Portugal. There was kind of the beginning of a civil war in Angola, and we were caught in the middle of that with my family, and we have to run away, basically, with a couple of handbags and a few clothes, and that was it.
Wow! And then where did you move? What part of Portugal did you end up? And how old were you? And what sort of do you think that had on your family and early life?
I was when we moved from Angola and being caught in the middle of that shit show. I was 10, and I had my sister was 9, and my little brother was like 2 years old. And one of the things I remember is that my sister, because of the trauma, I guess, she didn't have any memory of Angola, although she was 9 when she left. And then so we came here, and we went to live in Trás-os-Montes, up north, close to Bragança, and spent there a year trying to figure out what to do next. And in the meantime, my dad went to Brazil. He spent a few months there, and he found a job, and he wanted us to go there to live with him in Brazil. But my mom said no. She wouldn't leave Portugal again. And so he came back, and after that, we went to live in Carcavelos, close to Cascais. And I spent there, I guess, all my youth and early adulthood until I got married, basically.
I guess that's where you first started to surf was around about 11.
Yeah. Sorry? No, it was later. I was maybe 16, I think. And because, I mean, living in Carcavelos close to the beach is basically impossible not to surf. Back in the 80s, we were just a few. There was only a few of us. But anyway, that's what you did. We spent the summers at the beach, and even before starting surfing, even in winter, we would be there. So it was basically impossible to be around all those guys, the older guys, and not take up surfing. And that's what me and a few friends did at the time, early 80s.
Yeah,
that was a fun time.
It was a fun.
I keep saying that. Yeah, for me, I keep saying this, but for me, Linha de Cascais, I mean, that area between Oeiras and Cascais, living there in the 80s, I guess it was what I imagined would be living in Southern California in the 60s, It was the same kind of vibe, I guess. It was fun.
Yeah, so there's a lot of beach life and quite casual.
Yeah.
Kind of away from the city, but you still have like a lot of fun from the city. People visiting from the city to have fun at the beach, and so there was a good vibe, I guess.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah. Although at the time there was a kind of a difference between the people of the Lisbon people and the people from Cascais, because most of the people that lived in Lisbon would go a lot more to Costa da Caparica, to the beach. So Linha de Cascais was pretty special. It was different. It wasn't like living in the city. It was, I mean, I guess we live there a little bit away from the city, basically, in our daily lives.
yeah,
But it was nice.
yeah,
Mhm.
you can get some really good waves in Carcavelos. It's
Yeah,
more busy these
yeah.
days, but you can get some really
Ye-
good barrels there for sure.
yeah, on the left-hander called
Uh,
Calhau.
yeah, yeah.
When you started surfing in Carcavelos, it would took you like 2 years until you get accepted at the left-hander on
Mm.
the left side of the beach. Those were the locals were pretty hard at the time.
Yeah, as it should be, as it should be.
Yeah,
Need
I
to
guess.
you need to have those steps in life, and like
Yeah. Mm.
I think like sometimes we're missing. Like I grew up surfing a really terrible surf spot in the south of England, but it was a really small, tough knit community with a great surf club, and very similar to what we're talking about, like a Huntington Beer type vibe.
Mhm.
Um, Even to this day, it's got crazy problems with the localism, and the Facebook page is all it is.
Mhm.
It's just about bitching about people dropping in and stuff. But I had one or two guys there that were the older crew, and they just kept us all in order. I never forget one time. At that time, I was on a bodyboard as well. Running across the pier and jumping in off the end of the pier because we couldn't quite get out because it was a little bit rough and stormy. Because always used to surf there when it was onshore, close period swell. It didn't really get much
Yeah.
in the way of a ground swell. Um, and we would get protection from the pier. And if you couldn't get out, sometimes the traveling rip going through
Yeah.
the legs of the pier was so strong that you just get swept down the beach. So we'd run around, jump off the pier. And I remember the local Guy Penwarden, his name was. He still surfs now there, still in the same place, still surfs there, loves it. He has a lot to do with Bonza boards, actually, Bonza surfboards, Camel Brothers.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I remember him shouting at us, going, "If you can't paddle out, you should not be out." That philosophy stuck in my head for a long time through my life. The last 40 years
Yeah.
of surfing and coaching and that kind of thing. That for me, almost in many ways, dictated how I surf coach, because I don't believe in taking people out the back on a board and pushing them into waves. I think you need to
Yeah.
learn it. You need to learn how to paddle out. You need to then sit out the back. You need to understand and read the ocean. And then because I think sometimes today we skip. We want the easy way. We want to skip all of the necessary things to get you to the peak and to read the waves. And you just want somebody to push you and you stand up, and
You know. You know.
it
You know
lessens
what's
the experience.
Yeah. You know what's funny about that? It's that's like a metaphor for life. You
Yeah.
know, you have to go through the rough pieces of life to get to the good stuff, and we tend a little bit to get things. I don't know, the easy way, maybe.
Yep.
You know, stay in your comfort zone and try to do it in a path of least resistance or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, with surfing and especially with Carcavelos, it's funny. There was always funny situations. For instance, you had to surf at the middle of the beach when you were starting, but then sometimes there was strong currents pushing you into the left hander. And it never happened to me, but it happened to a couple of friends of mine. Just getting there, they couldn't paddle the other way, so they got all slapped on the face and thrown out of water. They didn't even want to be there, but the current pulled them to the place where they shouldn't be, And that's another metaphor, when
Yeah.
you let yourself be pulled to a place where you shouldn't be, usually you get slapped.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like
Exactly.
really hard.
Exactly. And it's similar way. I really like the concept of the wave pools and all
Mhm.
kind of thing. And I fully understand people in life. It's like it's what got us here
Mhm.
into the present day from our ancestral beginnings. We chose the path of least resistance for our own
Mhm.
survival. But
Yeah.
in those primordial or primeval or whatever you want to call them times, we were also shaped by our environment. So we were tested and the resilience
Yeah.
survived. I think there was some statistic that I was reading that we are all descended from about 4,500 people that were left on Earth.
Yeah, I read that too.
It's so crazy. So you imagine within us we have if you believe in that kind of thing, but within us we have that resilience and that resistance. And I think sometimes when we make our lives a little too easy, which is a natural
Mhm.
order of things because it's a survival instinct,
Yeah.
we don't strengthen and we don't make ourselves resilient to, and I think it's possible why we have a lot of stress and disorder in many areas of society today. Um,
Yeah. And it's really it's not complex, but it's kind of funny how it relates to surfing,
yeah.
you need a lot of resilience to keep surfing because you get pounded a lot more than you have fun. A
Exactly.
lot more times.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway,
And it's also
there was
we were talking a little bit about Angola, and I was also before we started
Mhm.
recording, I was saying that I was living as a young kid in Saudi Arabia, and I
Yeah.
had to return to the UK briefly because Saddam Hussein dropped a Scud missile next door on the American airbase nearby where we were living, and I think these kind of early awakenings when we're kids, you experiencing the war and me experiencing also a big life change from an amazing life in Saudi Arabia to suddenly the sky turned black when they were burning the oil fields of Kuwait. And
Yeah.
I think as a kid, you just it opens your eyes to some bigger realities, and perhaps that's shaped a lot of our childhood. You went, reading here, you went into I don't forget. I also want to talk about Cevat, which would be very cool, the martial art you thing. But you also went into
Mhm.
the military at quite a young age.
Yeah, there was at the time there was a conscription, so you had to go whether you wanted or not. And it could be postponed as long as you keep studying and finishing your degree or whatever. But then I decided to drop out of university, so I had to go there, and I didn't want to go,
No.
obviously. But after spending there, sometimes it was kind of a life that I actually enjoyed it because it was pretty active, and has always been unorganized and I don't know how to put it, and it gave me some structure, if you want, some discipline and structure, and so I spent there like 18 months or 16 months, something like that, and then I quit. I had to leave because it was only the part that we really had to be there. And then so when I got out, I found a job, um, designing kitchens and stuff like that, designing and selling them to I don't know, whatever. And after a while, they called me from the army. They asked me if I wanted to go back, and I said, "Yeah, of course." So I went back to the army and
Nice.
spent another how many years? I don't know, maybe 7 years there. Yeah, 7 years. I spent there another 7 years doing all different kinds of stuff.
Mm.
Most of the time was instructor, combat instructor, and stuff like that. And then so I spent a couple of years there more.
And you're an
That was
orphan.
it.
well, apparently, like,
Yeah, because yeah, I was an officer because when I got there conscripted the first time, I went to the what how should I put it, to the school, to a school where you would go for, who would be a sergeant or an officer. So I went to the officer school, and so for uh, in effect, I was an officer when I got out the first time. So when they recruited me again, I was an officer again,
right.
and I graduated a couple of times, and that was it, basically.
Nice. And because I'm also excited to talk to you a little bit about Cevat and combat because
Hmm.
in the 3rd of May, which is actually going to be my birthday, I've entered the World Masters Championship of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. So
Yeah.
currently I'm cutting weight for that because I'm trying to cut down to the 88 kilo category.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll see how we go with that one, but it's about a kilo a week, so it means no more beer, which is not such a hard thing to do, but
Yeah.
uh,
Just fasting a bit.
yeah, just fasting a little bit and keeping a little bit more healthy and mindful of
Yeah.
portion size and things like that. Uh, but yeah, is that in the military? Is that where you learned to your form of martial arts, Savat?
No, no, it was before. I had since my first friend in Portugal when I went to live to Carcavelos was this guy. There was, I mean, he liked to fight. We were the same age, and he enjoyed fighting. Sometimes we would be playing on the street, and he would go, "Let's fight," to fight him. So during our adolescence, if you want, he practiced all kinds of different martial arts. And then when I was maybe 18, 17, something like that, this guy that he was the son of Portuguese immigrants in France, and he came to live in Portugal. And he was a red glove of Savat, and he decided to introduce Savat into Portugal. And for some reason, this friend of mine got in touch with him, and both of us went to, I don't know, train with him. And we were probably the first class of Savat in Portugal. This was back in 1982, something like that. Yeah.
And
And
how does Savat differ from other martial arts disciplines? What's the
okay,
right?
it's like Savat is a French combat sport, more like the hand technique is the classical English boxing technique.
Mhm.
And then you have kicks too with your legs. Basically, like three different kinds of kicks, and you can get combinations of those. And they also have a form of fighting with a stick. It's called lacan. It's like a wooden stick, maybe 1 meter long. You use it kind of not like a sword, but it's kind of, how should I put it? I don't know anything similar to it, but the foot technique is maybe closer to kickboxing,
Mhm. Mhm.
and the hands is it's exactly like the classical English boxing.
Yeah. Mm.
That's basically now some, and it's pretty nasty. It's pretty
Yeah.
nice
And
actually,
how
and it's
the French
I
came up
like it.
with it, or they adapted something from other
I
martial arts?
think they adapted it. If I remember correctly, they created it somewhere around the 17th century, and it was kind of an adaptation of different forms of combat, and it became big. And it's I like it. I like it the same way I like martial arts like taekwondo and stuff like that because it's pretty elegant. It's fun to watch because it's elegant, and it it's I would say I see it the same way I see taekwondo, for instance, in the way that it is fought. Maybe.
Yeah. Yeah, it's fascinating. And these types of sports and is always very handy to have when we're surfing areas like Carcavelos.
Oh man, but so many jiu-jitsu specialists nowadays,
Yeah,
it's not
yeah.
easy.
Well, that's the problem. I always believe, actually, what I have a very good philosophy about peace. And I think if everybody knew martial arts, um,
Hmm.
nobody would end up fighting because you just never know when
Yeah.
you're going to pick on somebody that was much better than you. Because
No, I totally agree. And
you
you
already
know
have
what I
the
feel?
knowledge and the capacity. I think the dangerous people are the ones that they think they can fight, but they can't fight.
Yeah, yeah. And there's another thing that martial arts and combat sports give you is it's you get more relaxed and you don't get into a fight as easily
Mm.
as if you don't know how to fight. When you know how to fight, you calm down a lot. I think most people, not all, but most people calm down a lot and try to avoid problems and try to avoid fights, and because they know how to fight. I guess. I
And
guess that's the
you
reason.
realize you can hurt
I
somebody,
agree with you.
you know.
Yeah. Hmm.
You know.
Yeah, and you can hurt yourself because you never know when the other guy is better than you.
Yeah, exactly. It does. It creates a great modesty, and it's
I guess so.
really benefit.
Mm.
My son's been studying since he was 2 years old. So jujitsu.
Yeah. So,
He started
how
with.
old is he?
He's now 5. So
Okay.
he actually trains with in a group with 5 to 6 year olds, but he does a lot of
Hmm.
training also with kids from 7 to 14 years
Hmm.
well. So he does both classes, and because
Hmm.
his belt grading is quite high. So and really, it's just
Yeah.
amazing to see how natural he flows with it. Um,
Yeah. It's easier of course, when you start that young, it's a lot easier, and probably has other advantages also, coordination and stuff like that,
yeah,
confidence.
yeah.
All the things we want to give our kids.
And you were also talking about the discipline of the army, and it's
Hmm.
similar to here because unfortunately the school is a little bit rough that he goes to, and they
Hmm.
don't have. I'm not sure whether it's in their application of discipline. I don't know whether it's a general thing or whether it's just a little bit too relaxed. But there is not much discipline there. But he gets a lot of his discipline, a lot of his respect for his elders, and that kind of thing through the Brazilian Jiu Jitsu, through
Yeah.
the Cabrinha
Yes.
method. They're just the honor, the gradings, the standing, the bowing, the respect, the shaking hands, and all these kind of things that
Hmm.
they don't seem
Yeah.
doesn't seem to get in school. The kids are all over the place there, and I don't really understand why. Unless I can actually go in there and watch what's going on, you never know, right? What your child's getting up to at school, which is scary. But yeah, so he learns a lot of discipline from his martial arts,
Yeah,
and
I guess. I mean, uh, uh, one way or another, if you start with collective sports like football or rugby or whatever, um, it's one of the things. Collective sports, one of the things that give you discipline. But I think that combat sports or martial arts are probably the best on that regard. On the discipline, and as you said, respect for the elders, and I don't know, being polite, all that kind of thing, because it's something that some people can relate to. That if, for instance, in your jiu-jitsu fights, if you fight someone when the combat is over, I mean, your friends, right?
yeah,
It was just a fight. Somebody won, somebody lost, but it's no grudge. There's no hard feelings against each other. And that's one of the things that the kids need to learn too. Sometimes you lose, sometimes you win. So
yeah, and
that's life.
it's also like there is certain things in sports which I don't like. I like the physical game of playing football, but
Hmm.
I'm talking on a podcast Portugal, and I'm going to say right now that I don't
Hmm. Okay.
tend to that I don't even tend to watch Portugal. I don't tend to watch football because it irritates me with the attitude of many of the players and in scoring a goal and the da da da.
Yeah.
I
Hmm.
come from more of a rugby background. My whole family's
Yeah.
comes from rugby, and although these days I am noticing a little bit too much celebration, but I do like the fact that you score a try, you run back to the 22 with your head down, and you congratulate your teammates, because it wasn't you that scored the try. Who actually got you over the line was a combined effort of the team. And I think sometimes, like for me, when you go more towards the martial arts, which have their roots in that Eastern philosophy of modesty and bowing the head, it's that same thing. And um,
I guess the thing with rugby, and I totally agree with you. And one of my sports teacher when we were 14, he played at the Portuguese rugby team, and he got everyone into rugby, and we were all big fans of it. But what you're saying about the Oriental philosophies, you can say about the British gentlemanship thing that you can see and I can feel on rugby, and you cannot feel it on football. Totally agree with you. Actually, I don't watch football.
yeah,
But anyway,
it's strange.
I was yeah.
It's strange, isn't it? The similarity. I just get so put off by by that whole attitude, and. And I actually in Saudi, I taught a little rugby. I taught a little football club for kids, and they used to run around with their shirts on their head and stuff like this, just emulating their the big players that they looked up to. And I feel it's massive responsibility for the players to really think about their conduct and but
yeah, but it's it's a big sport and there's big money on it. So
yeah, it has so much influence, so it is almost so important, But
yeah,
I can go on about that for a long time. But what I am very happy to see Portugal doing so well with the rugby, not only the rugby sevens recently, but also qualifying again for the World Cup. So I'm so happy for that. Really,
that's nice.
It's really cool.
That's nice.
Yeah. So we also, I'd like to talk to you a little bit about art as well. And then we're gonna probably run out of audio time at the moment in about 5 minutes. So we got plenty of time.
Okay.
And then so actually, what I want to start. I'm reading that you started building you built a company with a starting value of about €3,000. You managed to build company with millions in revenue. What is that company, and how did that happen? A good part of this podcast is really to talk about entrepreneurship as well of Portugal and
okay. I started that when I got out of the army. I needed to find something else to do, and I couldn't see myself working for somebody else. So, and the surfing was important to me at the time. I decided to look, and the surf market was just starting to grow in Portugal. I decided to look for something to do with it, and I figured out maybe distributing a brand and a surf brand in Portugal would be a good idea. So I started reaching to some new brands that were, just showing up at the time, and somehow I connected with Volcom. This was in '96, late '95, early '96. And that's I had just that cash. I didn't have more than that, and so I can tell you the pretty fast the story how I got into Volcom, and then we can go to the rest. I got in touch with those guys, and they invited me for the Expo in Germany. I don't know if you remember that trade show.
Yeah.
And I got there. I met one of the founders, Tucker Hall. We had a couple of conversations. We had a few beers. We partied together. And that after a couple of days, he told me, "Okay, Elder, you're in." And that's how it started. And then it was just, work and going through really rough times. In 2001, I was getting kind of broke. So I found a partner who helped me a lot. He got to help me finance the company. And then that's when the business started to blow up, to going up, and getting more customers and big ones, and sales just went through the roof from 2001 maybe to 2010 when the crisis hit. And it was basically, I don't know, a lot of work, 80 hours of work per week or more sometimes, and sacrificing a lot, but in a good way, sacrificing some things to get out of this. And I know, staying connected to surfing, and that was kind of a passion. I think entrepreneurship needs, you need to have a passion for it, You need to
work those
love risk.
kind of hours. You certainly need to.
Yeah.
You need to love. You
Yeah.
need to love a part of it anyway, and accept the other.
Yeah, actually, I was lucky because I still am doing what I love, but I had to do a lot of stuff I didn't like, and that's why I think I taught my kid, and I keep telling kids, is that if you don't love what you like, what you do, or I mean, if you don't do what you love, just try to love what you do, whatever it is. It doesn't matter what you do. Try to love it somehow, and you see, you will succeed if you do it.
Yeah. It's finding the love in the smaller things, isn't it? Like
it's exactly
the Zen, or finding that it's a kind of a little bit of a Eastern philosophy again, martial arts, and also the military discipline. You have
sorry to interrupt you, but I always remember that actually the book that Richard Wolcott, one of the two founders of Volcom, read the most, and it based his philosophy, was the biography of Bruce Lee. And as you're talking, I remember that Bruce Lee famous phrase, the "be like water, my friend." Remember that?
Yep. Yeah.
That's it.
It actually, because I studied a little bit of MMA as well, and I come from, my grandfather was a boxer, so I also adapted my style. I actually started surf because I surf and play cricket, goofy foot, and so but he was boxing regular. So I changed to southpaw because Bruce Lee said, "Put your strongest side first." And that. Yeah, it's crazy. He had so much influence on so many of us, I'm sure.
So many people, yeah. I guess that's it. And
but tell me about Volcom, because from Volcom for me has always been one of the more edgy brands in surfing. You have Billabong and you have Rip Curl, and you kind of have the Australian side brands, and you have some of the Californian brands, but Volcom for me has always been a little bit more on the edge, a little bit more creative. There's been a lot of art in the branding, and all of that kind of thing. And even down to some of the sponsorship deals have always been slightly more underground surfers. So Volcom for me has always been uniquely underground. I loved, I think it was back in the 90s, you guys had a strapline saying "Youth Against Establishment." It's always been very creative and had lots of cool creative partnerships. And, you've always supported a few of my favorite surfers. One of them actually was Miguel Mizinho. I don't know if you know Miguel, but we used to.
I know Miguel really well. He was supported directly by me.
Yeah.
For a long time. Him and Alex.
Alex.
I started supporting both of them at the same time.
I didn't know that. I didn't know, because Miguel was. We used to surf together a lot because we worked together as well from Dojo for a while, and he was really, really funny in the water because we always used to surf together. He's very active, He's very active in the water.
He doesn't stop.
Doesn't stop paddling. So he always did this classic thing in slightly busy days in the Mado, where he would be paddling, and then suddenly he would be looking out at the ocean, and then he would suddenly paddle off like 20 meters away, super fast. So you'd see everybody, because see that he absolutely rips. So they're watching him going, he must be a local kid, and he's ripping. What's going on? So you see the herd, the flock, start to paddle over where Miguel is going, and then he would just
Yeah.
do a 180 and swim all the way back, and then take the the next set. So he'd move the whole crowd one way, and then
Yeah.
it was really funny. Once you started to
Yeah.
that's what he was doing, you would just chuckle to yourself.
Yeah.
But yeah, Volcom.
Okay. Volcom. It's the whole story of Volcom is it's fun. You know, the thing why as you notice, and you notice pretty well about the creativeness and all that side of Volcom and being kind of underground and different, it's because the brand has a foundation on Dadaism. You know, on
Okay.
the idea of Dada.
Yeah, I know
That was
that.
it. Yeah, because if you remember back in the early 90s, late 80s, early 90s, punk was coming back, especially in California, with all those bands from those days, like NoFX and Bad Religion, and I don't know, a lot of them, and Offspring, and I don't know, Agent Orange. And punk was returning kind of 10 years after it kind of died. And it was returning there. And both founders, Tucker Hall and Richard Wolcott, they used to work. Both of them used to work for Quicksilver, and Tucker had been fired. And Richard Wolcott did. You remember that the first Kelly Slater movie, the Kelly Slater Black and White?
Yeah.
It was produced by Richard Wolcott. And in a snow trip, they decided to create a new brand. And they based the whole idea on punk. And punk is kind of I don't know, the grandson of the Dada movement of the early
So let's explain
1920s.
Yeah, let's explain to listeners a little bit the Dada. Salvador Dada, but it was Dadaists and Surrealists, right? They came out of
Yeah, they were different. Yeah.
Yeah.
The Dadaist was a movement that started in Zurich, the Cabaret Voltaire, during the First World War. A few artists got together and they decided of kind of deconstruct art, and that everything could be art. A good example, when I gave some clinics to the employees of my accounts, the first slide, if I do a PDF or
I'm going to
PowerPoint,
interrupt you there. Marcel Duchamp, the urinal.
Yeah, the fountain.
Yeah, is it called the fountain? Is it? Yeah, basically for the listeners, it's a urinal to a gallery
turned upside down
by Marcel Duchamp. I think it's Marcel Duchamp, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's Marcel Duchamp. It's always the first slide, and I mean, and one of the most important was a poet called Tristan Tzara, and he said that to write a poem, you just cut words, put it in a bag, and without seeing them, just take one by one and align them, and that's a Dadaist poem. You know, so basically, Dada is everything and it's nothing. And Volcom was based on that idea, art-wise, and also on the attitude and the way of, being, even from the business point of view. It was all about fun, having fun. And I don't know, you spoke about the youth against establishment thing, and that's basically the punk idea. Instead of the no future of the 70s, was youth against establishment, because the establishment at the time, early 90s, was pretty nasty. And the brand, these two guys were pretty aware of everything that I like too, like art, politics, the way the system works. How can you work around it or with it or against it? And there was the idea behind the brand. And so you can notice that on the early prints on T-shirts.
Yeah.
If you look into it, you'll see that's Dada art.
Yeah.
That's how they did, and it reflected itself in everything, even sponsorship. We were not looking for the best surfer or the best one, or I don't know. We're just looking for great people.
Was Aussie
with great families?
Was Aussie Right sponsored by you guys?
Yeah, since 97, I
I
think, and he
remember.
still is.
I remember meeting him in Ozigor. I can't remember which
Oh,
the
yeah.
nightclub
Oz is the
there.
man.
There was one guy. We all went in there. We were pretty loaded up, I think. And
Yeah,
there was one
always.
guy there dressed in a. He was in a dress. I think he was in a big pink like fairy dress. And
Yeah,
I'm
probably
like,
with latex gloves.
yeah, yeah. And am I actually seeing this, or is this something else going on here? But it
Oh,
was pretty
man.
wild.
Yeah, Oz is the man. When he came to Portugal a few times at late 90s, early 2000s, and he stayed in my house a couple of times, stayed with us, and he's the nicest guy, and the most amazing person, and super creative. I still have some drawings and some paintings that he did in my house, and it's like I don't know, pretty precious. It's a great guy.
Yeah,
It's probably the best example.
yeah, I mean, I didn't really have, I didn't know the knowledge and the roots in the Dada movement, and actually
Hmm.
that's why I have such an affinity to the brand because it's just so creative and the
Hmm.
idea of the arts and all the guys that you were sponsored,
Hmm. Hmm.
and it continues, and the surfing industry story is a story of actual crazy successes and also a lot of hard times. Surfing always seems
Yeah.
the industry always seems to go through these. I'm not going to say waves. it, it seems to go through these ups and downs
Hmm.
and pullbacks, and probably
Hmm.
well, I think we probably the brands are probably quite sensitive to this because they are about fun first and
Hmm.
they not necessarily finances first, which perhaps those types of structures may be able to win get through the storms.
Hmm.
And I know recently, like in the US, there has been a lot of
Hmm.
news about some of the holding companies of
Hmm.
brands like Volcom and Billabong and Rip Curl have actually
Yeah.
had a lot of problems recently, and it seems to be a normal cycle. And I'm also really happy to read the same. I'm not going to say the company, but the holding company here in Europe is actually doing really well. So,
Yeah.
how's that
Yeah.
going? How's that going to affect you? Because your distribution company is not called Volcom. Let's get that. You have a separate company that distributes
Hmm.
them, and do you
Yeah.
distribute other brands as well, or is it just
No, this time the whole business changed. It's the story is the my company is not a distribution company anymore
okay?
because a few years ago, with all the web commerce thing and the internet, um, the pan European thing became a reality. If you're a distributor, you can. It's not possible for the distributor to have the same prices as the mothership in Europe. You're always a little bit above it, and at, now you cannot work like that. The prices have to be the same all over Europe. The all the messaging, everything has to be a lot more coherent than it needed to be. You don't adapt it so much to your own market. So the whole business model had have to change. So basically, all of us in Europe became agents. So we work as agents, and the headquarters are in France, in Angola, and we're basically agents in each country. We're not distributing anymore. There's only a couple of exceptions in Portugal
Okay, so the difference of
for
that is
different
you're
reasons.
you're not buying at the
No, no,
the
no,
distributed price and then selling on at different price.
no, 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 no.
Uh,
Yeah.
you are
Hmm.
literally, working as agents on a fixed.
Exactly.
Okay, okay.
Yeah, on commissions, and basically what I do is I take care of the brand in Portugal
Hmm.
in most things, and I'm like even on with events and stuff like that. I mean, everything goes a little bit through me, but it's the main decisions are all taken in France. Not anymore, because back in the day when Miguel Mozinho and started with Volcom, it was all on my company, but now it's different. Everything is centered around the headquarters in France.
Yeah.
basically.
I mean, you still have some really like I know a mutual friend Donny as well
Hmm.
that's probably
Yeah.
the punk thing is why he's always dyeing his hair green and leopard prints and all that kind of crazy stuff.
Hmm. Yeah,
And,
yeah. Goni is my little brother.
yeah, he's also
I know him
great.
since I was a kid. So
Yeah, 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 and it's it's a I mean the brands now
oh
it faces challenges like the surfing brands,
yeah,
and
no,
and I
and
think I think the originality of Volcom is always such a strength, you know.
yeah, it was the back the great crisis of the 2010s. There was probably what kept Volcom afloat, and it didn't suffer as much as other brands because of that creativity, and especially because most of the creativity comes from more from skateboarders. Skateboarders are usually a lot more creative than surfers or the snowboarders or whatever. I don't know for what reason, but they are.
Yeah.
And skateboarding was a big support, as it is nowadays snowboarding also. And Volcom was born as a surf, skate, and snowboard brand since the beginning, since day one, because both founders did the three sports,
Hmm.
and that kept us afloat. And of course, creativity. It's funny, because sometimes what happens is in a small market like Portugal, even in other markets, something becomes fashionable. And you have I don't know, a print on a T-shirt or a model of shoes, whatever it is, that everybody buys it, and it sells like hell for 2 or 3 years, and then it dies. With Volcom, that never happened. The thing that kept Volcom afloat was what you were saying, the creativity, the difference, the things that people never know what to expect on next season. So um,
Do you think
that's the main strength, I think.
do you think that was an actual strategy like that you put into the business model, or do you think it just happened organically that the creativity was the main focus and that's what is going to get us through that, like doubling down on your unique selling point?
Yeah, I think it was organic. Basically, because the everyone that works for this brand stayed faithful to the original idea. Going back to that Dada thing, and repetition is not exactly uh, I don't know, a Dada whatever, or a punk, or the idea of Volcom was always around this creativity of creating different things, doing different stuff, doing it different ways. And I think it's organic. In my opinion, it's organic. Maybe somebody up there uh, can say something different, but as far as I'm concerned, it's pretty organic. It was never something that was really planned.
Yeah, I think if you it's like that philosophy we were talking about earlier. If you stick to something, if you have a
Mhm.
belief and you have
Yeah,
a mind about
exactly.
it, then it's going to be successful. Consistency, I think, is part of the recipe for success.
That's actually this. You remind me of something that Richard Wolcott, when he was still in Volcom, told me once. I called him because things were pretty difficult at the time when Volcom got into the stock exchange, and sales were going up and down, and the stocks were going up and down, and it was kind of crazy. And we spoke on the phone, and I told me, "What is going on, man? This doesn't look good." And his answer was, "Just don't worry about the stocks. Just keep doing what you do. The stocks will take care of themselves."
Yeah.
And that's the idea.
Yeah,
No,
yeah. It's such a nice, but that's actually so true. It's such a nobody can control that
yeah,
really, and it's
yeah,
maybe
of
with the
course.
messaging, but the messaging would have been like, well, stick with what you're doing. It's a successful recipe, and then yeah,
Yeah,
that's a great it's a classic CEO or whatever like really and classic
yeah, but
surfing industry.
Wooly was a pretty special CEO. I mean,
Yeah.
he still surfs really good. He's a good snowboarder. He skates, and he lives for that. And he was a professional surfer when he was a kid, Actually, there's another funny story, if you don't mind. Back in there was the World Amateur Contest in California in 1980 something, and Woolley was in the final with Gary Elkerton from Australia,
Yeah, Kong.
and Kong and Chris Frohoff from California. And as Woolley was losing, he decided to block Kong to help his friend Chris Frohoff to win the contest, and he did. And then Woolley had to run away from the beach because Kong wanted to beat him so bad. Was running after him at the beach to kick his ass.
Yeah, that's not surprising, really, with Kong.
Yeah.
He'd get that nickname for no reason.
Yeah, and Woolley is a pretty small guy. He's really small, but it's an amazing guy. But it was just diverging from the conversation. Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, it's fascinating when you look at most surfing brands, the ones that were formed in the 70s and the 80s and sometimes even earlier. They were started by surfers, like I said,
Yeah.
and then they just seem to grow.
Yeah.
The money comes in, and then
Yeah.
you see, like it used to be in those days. It was like, okay, yeah, that we can take on these riders, and it was like a roadshow of fun and everything.
Yeah.
And then it seems like when that success gets to a point where it sort of raises the eyebrows of the financiers of the world, and we can call it more, maybe a little bit more like the suits start to like, we could make some money here. That's when it seems sometimes to always turns to shit, you know.
Yeah, it's always turns to shit.
Yeah,
you know, I mean, my philosophy on that kind of thing, what I think about that is that it's pretty hard to stay a salt. You know the book Salts versus Suits. It's really hard not to become a suit, and I think but most of those guys that founded these brands, I don't know if they got disappointed at a certain point because they had to be a suit or whatever. But anyway, there are good signs now. You know, with this mess, there are some good signs.
Yeah.
Because I read that the Ruka guys got one of their founders back. I know another guy that I know is he used to be also CEO for Volcom after Woolley, and he got hired. He's the CEO of another surf brand now, and I think also that the company that owns Volcom now invited Woolley to be kind of a consultant, to do some consulting with them.
Nice.
So I think they people are figuring that out and trying to get back to the roots, and you know.
So the suit ties are going to loosen in the next few months.
Yes, I guess so. They're going to loosen a lot.
I have a really good friend. You might actually know him, but he knows Aussie right, and that he's. I'm not going to mention his name on here, but we always used to call him the fallen executive, because he was, at the time, he was a salesman for a big car brand, and he always used to wear suits and, you know, look the part when he was at the garage or whatever. And then in the evening times, his tie was always loose and always a bit scruffy, and it just used to be a really funny nickname for him, the fallen executive. I can imagine we're going to have a few more falling executives, you know.
Oh, I guess you're going to have a lot of them. I hope so.
Yeah.
I hope so.
Yeah. So, I mean, and it's a story of resilience again, where, you know, we come back to that in business, in life, and in everything, and just sticking to what you believe in. And so what's coming up in the future? Is there any, because we met at the Volcom happening, which under 16, cool thing you guys support, and I love the format as well of the contest. I don't know whether that was partly your idea or Volcom's idea, but the format is very unique in terms of a surfing contest judging criteria or whatever, because it enabled the kids to be a little bit more expressive, which suited the conditions as well, which was quite cool.
The idea it's staying like that. That idea was born with the first global circuit we did for kids. It was called the Totally Crustaceous Tour, we had a couple of stops in Portugal, and then with all the I don't know, the mess that was going on for the last few years, we're trying to figure out a way to get it back in a different not format, but in a different way. And we started with this surf happening thing a couple of years ago with a kind of a digital contest, but different from the other ones. There was like kids could enroll in the website, and then we'd make heats with them. They had like 2 weeks to compete against each other. They could choose the beach and whatever, and film their two best waves. Then one of them would go to the next round and to the next round, and then there was I don't know, kind of a there wasn't a final actually. Since 2023, we decided to do a physical final. The first two ones were in the Canary Islands last year and the year before. And this year we did the final in the Algarve. And I hope we can keep it there, because it's you always have good waves at that time of the year. You have different kinds of options, and we hopefully will keep doing it in the same format for the next few years, and try to keep it in Portugal. Apart from that, Volcom has a lot of other events, more related to snowboarding and skateboarding.
Mm-hmm.
On surfing, we did last year in France the Twin Fin Aliotti Friends Invitational.
Nice. Yeah. Actually, William is like one of my favorite surfers. I didn't know he was also sponsored by Volcom, but he's one of my favorite surfers to watch at the moment as a surf coach.
Mm-hmm.
And I always like to talk about movement in time and space, and different approaches to that, both in martial arts and of course surfing. And his just the whole it's so different, but yet so there is a taste of the past as well there.
With him,
but then also not. So that's very cool. I didn't know that. That's great. Yeah, Twin.
Yeah, he's probably our number one sponsored surfer in Europe.
Yeah,
I guess.
Yeah,
so maybe him and Goni, and then a couple other kids too. And so we did that Twin Fin Invitational. He invited his friends to go there compete in Osagor. And the rest of we did so much shit, man, so much stuff.
Yeah.
On skateboarding and snowboarding and surfing. But I guess it's what Volcom is all about.
Yeah.
You need this kind of stuff to have fun, and you've been in the surf happening in Sagres. And I guess you saw how stoked the kids were and how much fun that thing was.
Yeah, I mean, and the sun came out for that day. If we, not sure if the listeners have realized, but the last month we've been having crazy storms and rain, and particularly here on the farm, it's just been raining all the time. We've got water everywhere.
Yeah,
and on that day, somehow we had absolutely pumping surf that was so big on the west coast that we had to use Beretta, which always picks up, that kind of wrapper as well. And the sun was out, and we were in shorts and having beers, and it was amazing luxury. And the kids were just in and out of the water, all surfing, super nice, hollow, quite fast waves with the occasional closeouts. But I always think it makes a nice contest when you have,
I think
certainty of what's going to happen with the wave,
I think that area likes us a lot, but we did the contest there in Amado and around it for 18 years maybe, and we always had waves and good weather on our contest. And this year was the same. The south of Portugal has been under huge storms. It's been raining all the time. It's pretty strange. It's not normal.
Yeah.
But for that contest, we had the sunniest day, and it was warm, and everybody was having fun.
Oh,
That's the idea. That's what it is around it.
my son actually still has one of those sticky things you guys created. You know,
Oh, it does?
I
Nice.
was playing with it this morning actually. Really funny. It's such a unique idea because he loves those sticky things, and I can tell you a funny story. Actually, I think maybe it was
Okay.
10 years ago at Amado. I think
Mhm.
you put me in one of those diamond, one of your Volcom stone
Yeah, okay.
bits, and I was running around the beach with all these kids.
Oh, he still has that.
Yeah, I remember just the kids all trying to beat me and punch me, and
Oh, they're trying to remember,
Yeah.
Alex Botelho used to be our victim on
yeah,
the
yeah,
contest.
yeah, yeah.
He used to wear that and carry a big bag full of goodies.
That's right. That's right.
And Sergio just yelled to the kids, "Go get him!"
Yeah.
because he's got goodies in the bag, and it was chased around
Yeah.
the beach,
So-
and it was
so
spanked by the kids.
Alex mustn't have turned up that day because I had to wear that thing. Yeah, but
He was Alex because he was big. That's why we chose him.
yeah, exactly. No, Alex is another great character, and he's
Yeah.
actually talking about resilience and resistance,
Mhm.
all these kind of things.
Eh.
Yeah, for people that don't know, Alex Battaglia is sponsored by Volcom, and he's also a big wave. Well, he's migrated more to being a big wave surfer in
Big wave
terms
surfer,
of
yeah. Mhm.
in terms of exposure. And
Mhm.
he had a
Yeah.
really challenging experience where he was pretty much he hit his head on a jet ski when he was being rescued, I think, and
Mhm. Yeah.
Alex was unconscious in the water. And dragged onto the beach unconscious, where he was resuscitated by the amazing powers that be there who know that kind of thing. And I think he spent quite a few weeks. I don't know, even a month in a coma. I think
That was in ventilation. I guess they induced coma.
that's it. That's it.
And he was ventilated for maybe 4 weeks or something like that.
Yeah, I saw him when he came out. I saw him on the beach. He
Mhm.
was just like, man, it was so heavy, and you could tell that the experience weighed really, really heavy on him.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if it was probably necessarily the accident in the water, but probably more likely the recovery and what he went through in those moments in the
Yeah.
hospital. But
Yeah.
I want to speak to him about it one time. Maybe, I don't know, if
Yeah.
it's something for a podcast because it's probably a little bit too deep. But
Maybe. Alex is another great guy. He's funny as hell.
yeah,
He's a really calm and smooth guy, but man, he's so funny.
yeah,
He's one of the funniest guys I know. So
yeah.
it would be a good idea for you to talk to
Yeah,
him.
yeah. Oh, it'd be nice.
Mhm.
It'd be nice. But it was such a heavy. It's such a
Yeah, that was really, really
people
heavy.
can Google it if
I mean,
they're that sick to want to see something like that. But
yeah.
it's and big wave surfing. Like the whole. I think I get a lot of clients actually when they want to come to Portugal. And we're going to go and go to Nazaré, go see Nazaré, and and I think it's definitely something that's come onto the radar in Portugal, and I think there's probably a few people, as in Pipeline, as in
Yeah.
Mavericks and other big wave spots. You get people not quite understanding what it takes and paddling out.
And even understanding what it is. It's like what some friends of mine that never surfed, when they talk to me about Nazaré, I always tell them that's not surfing. That's something else
Yeah.
that I cannot really understand. I don't really. I mean, it's amazing to see, but I don't really understand that. That's something pretty different. I don't know another word, but it's different. Something else. And I mean, guys like Alex, those guys are also different people. They are not in the same reality as we are.
Yeah.
Anyways,
I love the old.
that's it.
I love that sort of the classic Hawaiian waterman kind of thing,
Mhm.
where you
Yeah.
it's all just about the ocean knowledge, and you can be a small wave
Mhm.
surfer, big wave surfer, paddleboarder, windsurfer,
Mhm.
whatever.
Mhm. Yeah.
Even jet ski
Mhm.
rescuers. I think also I would consider
Yeah.
waterman for sure.
Yeah.
I think, it goes beyond a little bit just from surfing. I think it becomes
Mhm.
the waterman,
Yeah. Yeah. Something like
like
that.
the black belt in mixed martial arts or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, fascinating. It's fascinating.
Hard
Good to
hard. Yeah.
I've never been there myself, but it's definitely helped Portugal in terms of tourism and that kind of thing,
Yeah. And visibility, maybe. Yeah.
visibility, and helps with surfing
Mhm.
and whatever in
Yeah.
both positive ways and negative ways in many ways. But
I just find it weird. But anyway,
yeah,
those guys,
I'm
this.
definitely toe in. So it brings opportunities for all different types of board riders as well. For
Mhm.
me, like
Yeah,
the
of
whole
course.
toe in thing.
Of course.
It's one of the reasons why these wave pools. There's
Mhm.
two big issues I have with wave pools. The first one is, why do you paddle into a wave pool? If you looked at the economics of a wave pool, the power cost per wave, per capita, per
Yeah.
how much you. When
Mhm.
you paddle for a wave, as we all know, you're probably paddling into that wave maybe 1 or 2 meters, maybe maximum 3 meters.
Yeah.
So when
Mhm.
you multiply that by every wave you're selling, you're losing quite a lot of
Yeah.
power. Why not
Yeah.
have a boom that swings out a little bit like a ski chair or a ski
Yeah.
lift, a boom that just swings out, and you have
Mhm.
put foot straps on a surfboard as well, and then you can just
Yeah.
drop straight into it, because like a surfboard. Many listeners won't know this, but a surfboard is a compromise between paddleability and rideability.
Yeah.
Now you can ride
Yeah.
a surfboard much thinner railed and much different shape than
Mhm.
what you need to paddle. So that
Yeah.
change the way a surfboard operates on a wave pool as well. Especially with foot
Yeah.
straps, then you can do all sorts of types of flip
Yeah.
maneuvers,
Mhm.
which would divert surfing into a new way. But it
Yeah.
would make a lot of economic sense, because it just, for me, if we watch the WSL and we watch the Kellys, what a fantastic wave. But it's
Mhm.
kind of there is something that's been removed from surfing in that event.
Yeah.
That is the unreliability, should I say, of the wave. So sometimes in surfing, you would get a wave that would just be a
Yeah.
confluence of energies, which would suddenly make this completely crazy, gnarly wave in a heat of
Mhm.
maybe mediocre waves. You don't get that at a wave
Yeah.
pool.
Exactly.
So why don't we switch it all up? Instead of the wave pool can be the canvas, but let's make the surfing the focal point of some differences, some
Yeah.
differences in terms
No.
of the way we approach it. It's not surfing as we would do in the ocean. It's a different type of
No, and it's
surfing.
yeah, it's a different type, and I'm an old fart, I guess, but
Mm,
one of the things that is fascinating on competition surfing is the possibility that somebody at the dying seconds is going to get the wave of the day and just nailed it.
yeah.
And that's something on a wave pool doesn't happen. It's just a pure ability contest, if you want.
Yeah.
There's yeah, I think there's not much knowledge involved, like ocean knowledge. There's not much of I don't know, uncertainty
Unpredictability. Yeah.
and
Predictability.
predictability.
Yeah.
Exactly. That's it.
Yeah.
So from a competition point of view, as far as I'm concerned, I think it's apart from all the I know the financial issues and stuff. It's kind of boring, you know.
Yeah.
You do not get bored if you
Yeah.
see the pipe pro,
Yeah.
I know, breaking 8 to 10 feet. You don't get bored,
Yeah. Which is
because there's all these things happening. But with surf pools, I don't know.
Yeah, which is kind of crazy, because the whole idea is that they're trying to broaden the. Well, I think the whole idea is, for sure, if you're going to invest 6 or 7 million into building a wave,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
you want to create a wider audience, and the whole
Mm-hmm.
event is going to create a greater awareness, and particularly if the Olympics, if you're going to have a country like, I don't know, China or Russia compete,
Mm-hmm.
can build a wave
Yeah.
pool in their Olympic city, and boom, there you go. But there seems to be a lack of consulting people like Volcom who understand what fun is about and understand the nitty gritty and the unpredictability and the Dadaism of a surf event.
Surf,
Exactly. Cutting up those words and putting it into a bag and throwing it out there. Whereas that surf event, it's almost made by suits.
Yeah, I think I like that thing, the Dadaism of surfing.
Yeah,
it's fun because it's real.
So I think what I'm getting at, and I'm going to get at Volcom Europe, what I want to see is a Volcom wave pool event where you mix it all up and make. Actually, I got to be fair. The wave pool in Munich has that section which is super cool. They have that little bit of an imperfection in the wave, which surfers they've been using to pull massive airs at the end of the ride, get a bunch of speed, and that's been very cool. That's been very successful. So I have to be fair.
Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah.
Yep.
Then the other big thing the second big problem I have for wave pools, and I'm going on about wave pools, is because from the ones in England, and I have a lot of clients that surf in Switzerland and the Swiss Alps. What a beautiful place to surf, but not in winter. There's a really cool
not outside.
There's a really cool place in Cornwall called the Eden Project. I don't know if you know it. They have this big
I don't know it.
Geodesic biosphere domes, which actually contain within them different environments. They have a desert in they have a tropical jungle in another. So why not build a wave pool within one of these geodesic domes and heat the water so we can surf in shorts in the Alps,
Holy shit.
Yeah.
That must be fun.
Yeah, so let's do it. Okay. Well, Helder, it's been a real honor to talk to you, and I love the story of the brands and of Volcom's beginnings and its ups and downs, and I think it's also very important to explain a little bit about the particularities of the different holding companies, and I think you wanted to say a little bit something about that.
Yeah, it's everybody heard about the news the last few months about those problems in the US with all the brands that are owned by ABG. They were all under the umbrella of basically all of them under the umbrella of Liberated Brands US, and so that's exclusively a US problem. Europe is Liberated Brands in Europe is an independent company. It's profitable. It's working. It's doing pretty good, and we are totally alien to those issues. So,
Great news.
Anyway, and it's a good thing that we're kind of insulated from those issues. Anyway, we have to wait to see what happens in the US because it's the same brand, so we probably will end up having the same kind of coordination we always had, and that's it. Just wait and see. But Europe is a different deal.
Yeah,
that's it.
I'm a big fan of Europe, and the world seems to close in on itself in many ways, and in terms of politics and all of these kind of things. But I think the European countries we've been through a lot. We've been through our ups and downs. We've had our share amount of history together, and I think we are brothers and sisters. So in a local market is a bigger local market, but it's still a market. And I do a little bit of fruit production here on the farm, and I've always believed in local produce, and we can call our European neighbors local because we're not so far away.
Yeah, exactly.
I think we are stronger as a union for sure, and be good to hear about Liberated Brands Europe continuing that strength. And
I guess
for all the young surfers coming through and all these cool events which happen, which is so important. I don't think listeners or many listeners would really understand what it means to a young kid who's absolutely. You and I understand it because when we were young, absolutely crazy about surfing, and unfortunately, in many ways, or fortunately in many ways, depends how you look at it. It can dominate your early childhood, and to the point you don't want to do anything else. And everything in your entire world needs to revolve and everything around surfing.
Yeah, exactly.
Some of us succeed in that, and we don't necessarily become professional surfers, but we might, like you and I, found a career, and somehow that it's got something to do with surfing. Even in terms of this podcast, has got a lot to do with surfing in some way, because I wouldn't be here in Portugal if it wasn't for surfing initially.
Nice.
And you discover these places, and then you fall in love with them, and then you appreciate all the other things they have to offer, not just the wave. We can, in early life, become a little bit directed, and the beauty about Volcom and the beauty about some of the surfing brands is it gives opportunity for these kids to express themselves on the beach with a surfboard.
That's a special thing also, I think, about the surfing market, about the surf industry, if you want to call it like that. I don't see any other sport where the endemic brands of that sport give back so much as the brands that work in the surfing industry. Since the beginning, like doing sponsorship and giving back to the community of surfers that made the brands at the end of the day, right? And I think surfing is pretty special on that. I have big arguments with some friends about it, but as an insider of the industry, I guess I could say I am. I don't see any other sport where the give back thing is as internalized as it is in the surf industry.
Well, I mean, if you look at some of these companies' formations, the reason why they make a product to sell is so that they can fund themselves to surf.
To surf, exactly.
Not the other way around.
I guess that's a common thing of all the surf brands. That's the common thread between all of them, is that idea. Let's sell some stuff so we can keep surfing.
Exactly. I think that is now the perfect message to end the podcast on. And I really, really appreciate your time. If there's any more you want to say,
thank you. I just wanted to thank you, Justin, for your kind words.
No, thank
you for having me, and thank you too for the. I think you. I get the feeling that you really love this country and you like it.
Yeah,
you like to be here. So.
Yeah, I'm trying to do a small part in helping promote what we have to offer here, and the business and pleasure.
And everything.
Yeah, everything. Okay. And I look forward to hopefully doing another podcast with you sometime in the future. Maybe we can do one live at an event, or there's lots of opportunities if you've ever got any messages out there. And if there's any way, I don't know if there's a particular link that you want to leave in the show notes that will go on the podcast platform, so that people can either go
people checking out one
calendar or something, or
there's I mean, you can follow the Volcom Surf and Volcom Skate accounts and Volcom Snow and Volcom Women's just a shitload of accounts on Instagram.
All right, let's do that.
And then, but if you want to keep informed about the events, what we do is that the institutional website is volcom.com or volcom.eu. You have one little thing down there that says blogs, volcom.com blogs. And you got all the information about all the events we've been doing and the ones we'll do in the future.
Cool, that's what I'll do. So I'll leave the opportunity to follow all the different Instagrams, social media.
Okay.
And then if people want to know what's happening, if there's something coming to their local beaches, or there's something where you can travel to go and see something, or watch live, or follow an event in another way, then I can direct them to the Volcom EU blog. That's great.
Okay.
Cool. All right.
That's it. Thanks a lot, Justin.
Thank you so much.
You.
Yeah, see you.
Thank you.
This is Justin West at Podcast Portugal, thanking Helder, and also thanking my supporters, Band of Four, for their really cool track. And thanks to the listeners once again. Over and out.
I need to concentrate. Stop this train of thoughts, or I will be crashing on a couch. I won't have much to grouch about.
Free audio post-production by alphonic.com.